Hey Shark fans, it's Melinda Marsalis. Welcome to Heard It on the Shark. I'll be your show host, and Mississippi Hills National Heritage Area is your show sponsor. Heard It on the Shark is a weekly interview show that airs every Tuesday at 11 a.m. on the Shark 102.3 FM radio station based in Ripley, Mississippi. Then it's released as a podcast on all the major podcast platforms. You'll hear interviews with the movers and shakers in North Mississippi who are making things happen. I'll talk to entrepreneurs, leaders of business, medicine, education, and the people behind all the amazing things happening in North Mississippi. When people ask you, how did you know about that? You'll say, I heard it on the Shark. Heard It on the Shark is brought to you by the Mississippi Hills National Heritage Area. We want you to get out and discover the historic, cultural, natural, scenic, and recreational treasures of the Mississippi Hills that are right in your backyard. And of course, we want you to take the Shark 102.3 FM along for the ride. Musical credit belongs to Hill Country Blues guitar legend Gary Burnside and the late great Buddy Grisham, playing Long Way Home from their album Acoustic Brothers, which was recorded at Sun Bear Studio in Ripley, Mississippi.
This program was recorded at Sun Bear Studio in Ripley, Mississippi.
Hey Shark fans, it's Melinda with another episode of Heard It on the Shark. And today in Sun Bear Studio, I have with me Bill Powers, a.k.a. Billy Joe Powers, who is one of our fantastic voices. If you listen to the Shark a lot, you will have heard him doing ads for us. But Billy Joe did not start his life out as a voice talent for a radio station. He started out as a police officer and then a Secret Service agent. So he worked very closely with former President Jimmy Carter. And in the wake of Jimmy Carter's funeral, I happened to find out the connection that he had with the former president, and I wanted him to come in and talk to us. So, Bill, thank you so much for coming today.
Well, Melinda, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You guys hear that deep voice? That's why we call him all the time. He's such a great voice for commercials. So let's go way back in time. When did you become a Secret Service agent?
September of 1996, after having been an Atlanta police officer since 1989. So a little over 7 years with the police department and then 22 years with the Secret Service.
Secret Service is, for all of us who don't know things, they're the guys that are like with the president or the vice president, and they got the black suits on and the sunglasses, and they're looking all cool, and they're making sure that everybody stays safe.
That's it, right.
Is there a special name if you're assigned to the president himself or herself?
Well, a special name for you?
Is there a special name for the team?
Yeah, so like when I was on the president's detail, it's called the Presidential Protective Division. And then like a former president, it's called the Carter Protective Division.
Whatever former president,
right.
So it could be the Bush
Protective Division,
okay,
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I would think that the presidential division would be the most stressful thing to be assigned to.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of moving parts when you move the president anywhere. You know, we're going by every mode of transportation to every country, you know, to all sorts of countries in the world. And, you know, we're one of the two major powers in the world where we take our own vehicles with us. So you won't fly to England and have the president getting into a vehicle that's owned by the English government. Ours are actually moved by the U.S. Air Force on huge cargo planes. It was mostly C-5 Galaxies when I first started, but then it moved on to C-17s. And it's really quite a thing to see, you know, 11 or 12 large armored vehicles moved into an airplane and then 75 or 80 or 100 Secret Service agents piling on there as well. And then, you know, flying off to all these countries in the world. Most of the continents I've been to. I haven't been to Australia and I haven't been to Antarctica, but the other continents I've been to.
And give me just two or three of the people whose detail you were on.
When I was on the president's detail, it was George W. Bush. He was the president. And then so the other detail that I was on, this was later in my career after I got promoted, and I was what they called an assistant special agent in charge, and I was on the Clinton former detail. And that detail at the time was split geographically between New York and Washington, D.C., because if you remember, Hillary Clinton had become a senator from New York. So she had to spend quite a bit of time in Washington, D.C. So some of us were stationed in D.C. and some were stationed in New York. So that was the 2 full-time protective details that I worked on.
Now tell me about your time with Jimmy Carter. What was your title and what did it look like?
Okay, well, when I first started with the Secret Service, like I said before, I started in the Atlanta field office. And because of the location of the Atlanta field office, we had jurisdiction over the area where Plains, Georgia is, which everybody knows. That's where Jimmy Carter's from, and that's where he's buried now and everything. So we would, as a young agent, we would do temporary details with him, temporary assignments to their detail. And some of them were in town. I might go over to the Carter Center and work over there in Atlanta, or I might go down and spend a week down in Plains just to augment their detail. And then there were times that we would go on trips. So while I was there in Atlanta, I had the opportunity to go on 2 trips with Jimmy Carter. One was to Jakarta and Bali, Indonesia. And then the other one was to the Middle East. So we were in Saudi Arabia, and we were also in Kuwait.
When you're on a detail like that on a trip, do you have any time at all to look around and go, wow, this is amazing?
Yeah, that's the great thing is you do get to do that. I mean, you know, it's not a fun trip. You're not there on vacation or anything, but you do have a bit of downtime, and especially during these 2 trips that I'm talking about, because I was a young agent, so you can imagine the shift that I got, you know, was 11 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning. And so when I was off shift, then I'd get a quick nap and then get up and go see the world.
Because when you're young, you can sleep 2 hours and keep going.
Yeah, and just keep going. Exactly.
So we've seen a lot of coverage of Jimmy Carter, and a lot of people have talked about his presidency versus his time after his presidency. And we're talking now about in 96, he had been a former president for
quite some time,
16 years or so.
16 years, right.
And so tell about the man himself. How did you find him as you worked with him?
Yeah, I mean, he was he's a generous guy. He gives of his, because you could retire from being president and just say, okay, I'm just going to golf and goof off and enjoy my retirement. But he really went to work after he retired. Everybody knows about what he did with Habitat for Humanity. He was a volunteer along with his wife at that. And we would accompany him to, events with that, where they were building houses and that sort of thing. But he also started the Carter Center, which is housed within the Carter Presidential Library there in Atlanta. And so they do tons of other work that you really didn't hear a lot about that during, the funeral and that sort of thing. But there was a lot of work that he did mostly in third world countries.
Bill, this is such a fascinating topic, and we've used up all our time for this week. Will you come back and let's do a part 2, talking some more about your Secret Service time?
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Okay, Shark fans, that's it for this edition of Heard It on the Shark. Tune in every Tuesday at 11 a.m. to find out what's happening with local community leaders. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for an interview, or if you want access to this interview, go to our website, shark1023.com, and click on the podcast tab. Keep it tuned to the Shark 1023 and have a great rest of the day.
The Mississippi Hills National Heritage Area was established by the United States Congress in 2009 and represents a distinctive cultural landscape shaped by the dynamic intersection of Appalachian and Delta cultures. This intersection has produced a powerful concentration of nationally significant cultural icons, including King of Rock and Roll Elvis Presley, First Lady of Country Music Tammy Wynette, blues legend Howlin' Wolf, civil rights icons Ida B. Wells Barnett and James Meredith, America's favorite playwright Tennessee Williams, and Nobel laureate William Faulkner. The stories of the Mississippi Hills are many and powerful, from music and literature to Native American and African American heritage to the Civil War. The Mississippi Hills National Heritage Area supports the local institutions that preserve and share Northeast Mississippi's rich heritage. Begin your discovery of the historic, cultural, natural, scenic, and recreational treasures of our region by visiting the Mississippi Hills National Heritage Area online at mississipphills.org.
This show is made possible by JC Media, LLC in Ripley, Mississippi. JC Media owns the Shark 102.3 Classic Rock FM radio station where the show is hosted, and Sun Bear Recording Studio where the interviews are recorded. We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes, Google Podcast, or Amazon Music, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That email is theshark1023@gmail.com. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite app or stream episodes online at shark1023.com/podcasts. Today's episode was produced by Melinda Marsalis. It was edited by Rick Williams and engineered by Chris Marsalis. The podcast technician is Joyce Grady.